Hello year 8s and welcome back to mathematics. In today's lesson we're continuing our topic of fractions, decimals and percentages. And what we're going to be looking at is this concept of GST. So here on our learning intention we want to be able to understand what GST is, and by the end of this lesson we want to be able to explain what GST is, be able to calculate what the GST payable on the good, and find the full amount required to pay, and also find the pre-GST amount. So those are the three things we're going to be doing. So let's start off by talking about what GST is. Now GST is just an acronym. It's short for Goods and Services Tax, and it is a tax paid by customers that is passed on to the government. So tax is just things that we have to pay to the government to help run things like our hospitals, our schools, our road, and maintaining our roads. So it's a tax that's paid by all consumers. So when you go to the shops and you pay for something, when you go pay someone to do something for you, this goods and services tax applies. It's for goods, things that you can buy, and services, things that people do for you, and it's passed on to the government. So the tax is 10% of a sale price. So what this means is whenever you sell something, 10% of that final amount that you pay usually is actually given to the government to actually help run those particular things. So this means that the total price being paid for everything is 110%. So we're actually paying 110% because this GST is included. This is different from places like, for example, America, where tax isn't included, and so when you go to the shops, they'll give you a price, but then when you get to the checkout, you will need to pay a price that's a little bit higher because they add on a bit of this tax. In Australia, that doesn't really happen. That GST is included, and so when you go to the shops, you just pay this one amount that includes GST. Now, how does this actually work? So let's think, for example, of a $3 packet of chips. So if a factory when a factory manufactures a packet of chips, they price it at a certain point. So let's say they price it at $3, and then they sell it to a supermarket, for example. And at the supermarket, what they actually do is they actually include this add-on, this additional GST. So they add on 10% of that original price, so of that $3, on top of that $3. So here, when you go pay for this same packet of chips, what you're actually paying is you pay, let me just draw on this packet of chips. So when you go pay for your packet of chips here, this packet of chips isn't actually $3, it's $3 plus an additional 10%. So it's actually $3.30. And so that extra 30 cents that that you pay goes to the government, and that helps run things and do all sorts of things. So that's what GST is. And whenever you pay for something, they might say, when you go to get a receipt from a supermarket, or your receipt from the supermarket, it might show how much GST you paid on your particular purchase. Now, not all things get accrue GST. There's some items and some things which are exempt from GST, but in most cases, you're paying this 10% that is included in the total amount that you pay. So you don't actually pay anything extra. It's just generally included already in your payment. So what we want to be able to do is actually calculate how much GST is payable, how much the amount is before GST is added, and how much it's added, how much amount would be costing if we didn't pay GST. So here, that's what we're going to be doing. So here, we're going to first start off with calculating GST payable. So to calculate the GST payable, what we want to do is we want to find 10% of the sale price. And so what this is actually doing is we are finding a percentage of a quantity. So here, a couple of lessons ago, we actually did that. And there was two steps that we followed. So firstly, this was the optional step that you can do. You can convert your percentage to a fraction or decimal. I said I usually prefer doing it with a decimal, and then we multiply that fraction or decimal with the quantity. So here, those are two steps. So you convert and then multiply. And so here, because you're doing it with 10% every single time, your 10% just becomes 1 out of 10 as a fraction, or 0.1%. 0.1 as a decimal. And so when we're trying to find GST, we're just doing this this operation of finding a percentage of a quantity. So let's go and actually have a go at doing this for a particular question. Find the GST payable on the following amounts. So here we want to find how much GST you need to pay if this is the raw amount that someone actually charged you. So let's say there's a table that a manufacturer values at $289. So here, all we need to do is go, okay, cool. If I want to find how much GST that this table would have actually normally occurred, we just go, okay, $289 times by your 10%. And so you can choose whichever form you want. You can write that as a decimal, you can write that as a fraction. I just prefer a decimal. So that's times 0.1. And so here I can check this in my calculator. I'll grab my calculator out. 289 times 0.1, and we get $28.90. So here all we're doing when we're trying to calculate the GST payable, we just calculate 10% of our amount here. So this is $1. This is just however much a particular item would cost. Let's have a look at this next one. So similar steps. So here, a bill from a gardener. If I can line it up, it's not lining up. That's okay. Actually, that's as good as I'll get. A bill from a gardener of $2,190. Okay, so here, just like we did before, $2,190 times by 10%, because we know that GST is roughly 10% of whatever our amount is. And so here we're just multiplying 290 times 0.1. I usually prefer writing it as a decimal, as I've said before. So here it's 21990 times by 0.1. So we get $219. So that's how we calculate the GST payable. All we're doing is finding 10% of the amount. And so here, all we do is just multiply 10% with our dollar amount. Okay, that's the first part of today's lesson. The second part is we want to actually be able to find the full amount when we're given the amount of GST. So let's say someone tells you, oh, the amount of GST that you paid for a particular item was this amount. And what we want to do is find out the total amount. The way that we do this is we actually use a thing called the Unitary Method. Now we're going to be looking at this Unitary Method in a bit more detail later, but there's actually 3 steps that we're going to do. So the first step is when you're dealing with the Unitary Method, and this is like kind of what the general gist of what the Unitary Method is about. What we do is we write the percentage and let it equal to the amount given. Now here, the percentage, because it's a GST amount, is always just going to be 10%. So we're going to say 10% of amount, and we're just going to say that is equal to whatever amount is given to us. That's the first part. Then the second part is then we divide both sides of our equation by the percentage. So in this case, we're dividing both sides by 10. The reason why we're doing that is because if we divide 10 by 10, we just get left with, on the left-hand side, 1% of amount, which is going to be helping us in a moment. So 1% of the amount is equal to something. And then we do a final step of multiplying by 100. The reason being is we want to get back to the original amount. The original is just 100%. All percentages are out of 100, and so we just want to find the total amount, which is just 100%. So here I just times it by 100 again in the final step, and we get whatever value that is going to be. So let's have a go at a couple of examples of this. Oh, actually, let's have a go at one example of this and actually apply this. So give me a moment. Okay, so using the Unitary Method. So a bike has GST of $38 added to its price. What is the price of the bike? A, before GST. So what we want to do is we want to find out the total cost of that bike before GST is added. If they tell us that the GST is $38, well, we can use this Unitary Method and work backwards. Okay, so let's have a look. So what I did was, firstly I start off by writing, okay, GST is just 10% of the amount. So 10% of, and this is a bike, is equal to $38. So I start off with that. The GST that I pay for this bike is $38. And so what that tells me is that 10% of the cost of the bike is $38. That's what the GST, knowing that this is a GST, will tell me. So I know 10% of the cost of the bike is $38. Then what I'm going to do, second step, is I'm going to divide both sides by 10. The reason being, I'm going to divide by 10, so I'm going to divide by 10 on both sides. The reason being is because on the left-hand side, this 10 will just become 1%. Because if I divide 10 by 10, I will get 1%. And 10 by 10, I will just get 1. And so here, when I divide by 10, 38 divided by 10 will give me 3.8. And then the final step is I want the whole amount. And so if I want the whole amount, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to multiply by 100. So here I'm going to multiply by 100 so that I can go from 1% to 100%. And so 100% of the bike cost is going to be 3.8 times by 100 will get me $380. So what that tells me is that this bike, it costed, therefore the bike costs $380 before GST. Let me write that in capitals. GST. Okay, there we go. That's how we can find the cost of the bike using this unitary method. So what we did was we first started off, we just write this equation. 10% of the cost of the bike is $38, and then we divided by 10 so I could get 1%, and I times by 100 to get 100%. And so that is what I'm going to do with the money amount on the right hand side as well. Okay, part B. What is the cost of the bike after the GST? Well, this is where we need to refer back to that diagram I showed you earlier about how GST actually works. Well, this $380 is just what the cost of the bike when it gets sent out from the manufacturer, and it's how much they value the bike at. It's $380. But when they sell it, they need to add on that extra 10% of the GST. So what I need to do for this part is if I want to find the cost of the bike after GST, all I need to do is I take my $380, which is the cost of the bike. So here, this is the cost of bike. And then all I need to do is add on top of that the GST. So here the GST in the question was $38. So this is the GST. And so this gives me $418. So this is a total cost of the bike. So this bike is going to cost someone $418 if they paid for it. Okay, so that's how we can use the unitary method to help me find the full amount. We use this unitary method where we go down to 1% and then we go back, work our way back up to 100. And then the final bit was that we just needed to note if we want to find the total amount of a bike after GST is included, we just add on the GST to that cost of the bike. Okay, let's have a look at the next part. The final part is that we want to find the price before GST. So let's say you get told that you need to pay a certain amount, and we want to find out what is the cost of the item before we paid for the GST. Well, all we need to do here is to find the price before the GST. We're going to apply the same steps above, but with 110%. So what this means is we're going to start off by noting that, well, if I paid the amount including GST, that's just 110%. If you include that price of paying the GST, we've just actually paid for 110% because we paid for the cost of that item and also that extra 10% of GST. So here we've paid for 110%. So 110% of original is equal to whatever, and we just use the unitary method. Now this time, in the first step, to get to 1%, instead of dividing by 10, we actually need to divide by 110 so we can get to that 1%. So 1% of original is equal to amount, and then we just do that same step at the end of timesing by 100. And so here we can get 100% of original is equal to something. Okay, so let's apply it with this question. So the final price of a meal at a cafe, including 10% GST, was $137.50. What was the price of the meal before GST? So what we know here is the final price, including the 10% GST, was $137.50. So this $137.50 was what we paid for the bill at the end, including the GST. Okay. And the question is, what was the price of the meal before GST? We want to find the cost of the meal before that GST is included. So let's go through these steps. So what I'm going to go is 110% of original. 110% of the original price was just this $137.50. $137.50. Then from there, what I'm going to do is I want to find 1%. So I just want to find, in my next step, I want to find 1% of the original. So if I want to find 1%, all I need to do is I just divide from 110, and I have to divide by 110 so I can get 1. So here I'm going to divide by 110. So I'm going to put this in my calculator. I'm going to divide the right hand side by 110 as well. So 137 137.5 divided by 110. That gives me $1.25. So 1% of the original cost of that meal is 1.25. Okay, then the final step is I want to find the total of the total price of the meal before GST. So I just need to times this all back up to 100 to get 100%. Okay, so here I'm going to times this by 100, so 100% of original is equal to, so let's times this number by 100 and get $125. So therefore the price of the meal before GST was $125. So that's how we can answer these questions here on GST. So let's do a quick summary of what we looked at in today's lesson. In today's lesson, we talked about what GST is. GST is this goods and services tax, which is paid by consumers on all goods and services. This is an additional 10% that's added on top of whatever you're paying for, and it's added to go towards the government to support different things. The way that we can do what we wanted to be able to do was be able to calculate how much GST was a particular item accrued. So here we just multiplied our amount by 10%. Then we also went through how to find the full amount when given the amount of GST paid. So we had to use a unitary method. So we get told the amount of GST, and that's just 10% of the original cost. And then we take that number and we use this unitary method to find out the total cost of the item. Then we could also find out the original price before GST. And so here we needed to note that we're paying 110%. So that additional GST of 10% is just 110% of the original amount. So we can use this unitary method as well. So that's it for today's lesson, Year 8. Hopefully that was helpful for you to help understand this next section on GST. If there's any questions, feel free to send me an email or send a message on the Google Classroom. I'm more than happy to try and answer your question. But as always, I hope you're staying safe wherever you are at, and I will see you in the next lesson. Bye!